The restaurant was glowing with warm golden lights, and every table was filled with rich guests who spoke loudly and laughed even louder. Expensive perfumes mixed with the smell of roasted steak and buttered bread. People wore shiny jewelry, designer suits, and dresses that looked like they belonged in a movie. Everyone acted like they were important. No one looked at the waiters who served them. To them, the workers were invisible. Among the staff was Mia, a young waitress with tired eyes but a soft smile. She moved quickly between tables, holding trays full of glasses. She needed this job more than anyone knew. Her father was sick at home, and she was working double shifts to pay his medical bills. She never complained, even when her feet hurt or when customers talked down to her. She kept her head low and her heart quiet. On the stage, a pianist played slow music. His fingers touched the keys without passion. He seemed bored, and the guests were even more bored. They rolled their eyes, tapped their fingers, and some even covered their ears. One man said loudly that the piano sounded like a dying cat. The pianist heard it. His face turned red from anger. Finally, after one rude comment too many, he slammed his hands on the keys and stood up. Everyone looked at him in shock as he shouted that he was done with this place. Then he walked out, letting the door swing behind him. The whole restaurant fell silent. The music stopped. The air felt heavy. People looked around, annoyed that their entertainment had vanished. A group of wealthy businessmen began complaining. A woman said the restaurant was unprofessional. Another threatened to leave. The manager rushed to the stage, sweating. He looked like he might faint. He had invited important guests tonight, and now everything was falling apart. Mia watched from the side as people became more restless. She had always loved music. She had played piano since she was a small child. Her father used to sit beside her during her practice hours, telling her she had magic in her fingers. But after his accident, life changed. Music school became too expensive. She had to quit her lessons, sell her piano, and take any job she could find. No one here knew that the quiet waitress once dreamed of becoming a professional pianist. She never talked about it. That part of her life felt like a distant memory. But now, the empty piano seat was calling to her. The crowd kept complaining, and the manager looked lost. Mia felt something push inside her chest, like a small voice whispering to her. Her heart beat faster. She wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and walked toward the stage. Every step felt heavy. The restaurant grew quieter as people noticed her. Some guests frowned, confused. Others whispered things like, "Why is she going up there?" Or, "What does a waitress know about music?" Their eyes were sharp and full of doubt. Mia reached the piano and gently touched the side of it. The wood felt warm. She had not sat at a piano in years, but the feeling was familiar. It was like touching a lost friend. Her hands shook, not from fear of the piano, but from the eyes staring at her from every direction. The manager rushed over and whispered urgently, asking what she was doing. Mia looked at him with calm eyes and said she wanted to try. He hesitated, unsure if he should allow it. But the crowd was seconds away from walking out, so he stepped aside and let her sit. She lowered herself onto the piano bench. The room held its breath. She placed her fingers on the keys, and memories flooded her mind. She remembered playing in school competitions. She remembered the proud look in her father's eyes. She remembered the dreams she buried under work and responsibility. People whispered again, but this time there was curiosity. No one expected anything from her. To them, she was just a girl in an apron. Just a worker. Just a nobody. Mia closed her eyes for a moment. She inhaled deeply. Then she prepared to play the first note that would change everything. Mia sat on the piano bench with her heart beating hard inside her chest. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes watching her every small movement. Some people looked annoyed, thinking she was wasting their time. Others looked amused, expecting her to mess up and give them something to laugh about. But a few people stared with quiet interest, wondering why a simple waitress would dare to sit at a piano in front of an elite crowd. Mia kept her hands on the keys, without playing anything yet. Her fingers trembled lightly. She did not fear the piano. She feared disappointing the people who believed she was nothing more than a server. She feared embarrassing herself in front of strangers who already judged her. But even stronger than fear was a small spark inside her, a spark that had slept for years. Waiting for this moment, she remembered being a little girl, sitting on a stool while her father taught her basic notes on an old keyboard they found at a garage sale. She remembered laughing when she accidentally played the wrong key and made a funny sound. She remembered the dream she once had, to perform on big stages, to have people listen, to make them feel something through her music. That dream had faded, but it had never truly died. Tonight, in this unexpected and strange moment, it tried to rise again. The restaurant felt strangely quiet. Even the sound of forks and knives had stopped. The elite crowd, who never cared about music unless it was played by someone famous, suddenly paid attention to a young woman in a worn apron, sitting at their piano like she belonged there. Their confusion made the silence even heavier. A little boy sitting at a table near the stage whispered to his mother, asking if the waitress knew how to play. His mother shrugged without looking away, as curious as her son. A man in a gray suit leaned forward, squinting at Mia like he was trying to guess her story. A woman with diamonds on her wrist raised an eyebrow, already preparing a smug smile for when she believed Mia would fail. But Mia blocked out every face, every whisper, every doubt. She lowered her head and focused only on the memory of the piano key she once loved. So much dot. Then she pressed the first key dot. It made a soft sound, almost too gentle to hear. But the silence in the room was so perfect that even that small sound felt loud. Mia took a slow breath. Her fingers began to move. She played a simple pattern at first, like testing her own courage. Her hands hesitated, but the sound was clean and pure. People exchanged glances. Some sat up straighter. Some stopped their breath for a moment. Something was happening, something they did not expect. Mia felt a familiar warmth in her fingertips. It was like the piano was waking up with her. She played another set of notes, and they flowed together in a beautiful rhythm. The melody grew, becoming stronger and smoother. Her fingers moved faster, more confident, as if they remembered everything her mind had forgotten. Inside her heart, something opened. Something soft and painful. She remembered nights she cried quietly, wishing her life was different. She remembered the day her father lost his job and their world became unstable. She remembered working late hours instead of practicing. She remembered giving up her scholarship and breaking her own dream in silence. And all of that emotion poured into the music. The crowd felt it. They did not understand her story, but they felt the weight in her notes, the sadness, the hope, the strength. A businessman who had been drinking wine suddenly stopped with the glass halfway to his lips. A rich woman who had mocked the pianist earlier now stared with wide eyes. Even the manager, who had been sweating and panicking just minutes ago, felt chills run down his arms. Mia continued playing, letting every emotion rise and fall like waves. The melody filled every corner of the room, climbing higher, sinking lower, and swirling around the listeners like a gentle storm. People who believed they had heard the best music in the world now felt something new, something honest, something powerful, something born from a place deeper than skill. A man in the back whispered that the girl was gifted. Another asked if the restaurant had been hiding her from the world. A couple forgot their argument at the table and held hands, both caught in the magic of the moment. Mia did not see any of this. She was lost inside the music, inside her memories, inside the version of herself she thought she had lost forever. She felt alive in a way she had not felt in years. Her performance was just beginning, but already the room had changed. The elite crowd, the wealthy guests. The cold faces, all of them had fallen silent. Because of a waitress who dared to touch the piano. No one expected anything from her, but everyone was about to witness something unforgettable. The moment Mia's fingers truly found their rhythm, the entire restaurant changed. It did not feel like a place where people ate expensive meals anymore. It felt like a concert hall. The soft lights above her head seemed to glow brighter, as if the room itself wanted to listen. The music was no longer background noise. It was the center of everything. For the first time that night, no one spoke. Not a single laugh, not a single complaint. The elite crowd, who usually acted like the world belonged to them, now sat frozen like students waiting for a lesson. Their eyes followed her hands as if each movement was part of a magic trick, but Mia did not notice the crowd. She was somewhere else, somewhere far from her apron, far from the heavy trays and long nights. She felt like she had stepped back into her childhood room, where the old keyboard sat against peeling wallpaper. She saw her father smiling at her, telling her that every note she played had a story. She saw herself dreaming of performing on grand stages, imagining audiences cheering her name. Her fingers moved faster. Her emotions poured out like water breaking through a dam. The melody deepened and soared, rising higher than anything the restaurant had ever hosted. It was not perfect. It was not polished. But it was real. And that truth was something even the richest hearts in the room could understand. A young woman sitting near the stage slowly pressed her hand against her chest. She felt tears forming in her eyes, though she didn't fully understand why. An older man who had built his entire life on strict logic and cold decisions suddenly felt warmth he hadn't felt in years. A couple celebrating their anniversary held each other tighter as the music reminded them of the first time they fell in love. Mia played on, unaware of the emotional storm she was causing. But there was one person who watched her more closely than anyone else, a man sitting quietly at the back of the room. He didn't wear flashy clothes or expensive jewelry. His suit was simple but elegant. His hair was neatly combed and his eyes sharp with experience. He was a well-known music producer, though few recognized him. He had come to the restaurant for a private dinner, not expecting anything unusual. But the moment Mia touched the piano, he felt something shift inside him. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes narrowed with interest. He had listened to thousands of musicians. He had judged hundreds of performers. But the music coming from this waitress was different. It wasn't perfect technique that caught his attention, though her skill was impressive. It was the emotion, the honesty, the raw beauty in her playing. He listened quietly, realizing he was witnessing a rare kind of talent that could change the world. If given a chance, Mia continued to pour her soul into the melody. Her hands moved quickly, jumping across the keys with a mix of confidence and vulnerability. The gentle waves of music grew into a storm, powerful enough to shake the room. Then, just as suddenly, the storm softened, turning into a quiet whisper of hope. The crowd was mesmerized. Even the staff who were supposed to be working froze in place. A waiter holding a tray of drinks stood completely still. A chef peeked out from the kitchen door, eyes wide. The manager, who had been terrified earlier, now watched with pride and disbelief. Unable to believe that the girl who took extra shifts and never complained was capable of this, Mia played a soft passage that sounded like a memory, gentle, broken, but full of longing. It touched something deep inside every person listening. Some felt their own childhoods rise in their hearts. Others remembered dreams they had forgotten or sacrificed. The music made them feel something many of them had not felt in years: humanity. The room was so silent that the sound of Mia's breathing blended with the melody. Then something unexpected happened. A small girl, no older than 7, stood up from her chair and slowly walked toward the stage. Her mother tried to stop her, but the girl gently pulled her hand away. She stood beside the piano, staring at Mia with wide, shining eyes. She whispered softly, "It's beautiful." Her voice was so pure that a few people gasped that Mia heard it. And for the first time during her performance, she opened her eyes. She saw the little girl. She saw the crowd sitting in complete silence. She saw faces filled with awe, not judgment. She saw people who, minutes ago, had not even noticed her existence, now looking at her like she had changed the entire world. Her heart trembled. Her music grew even stronger. Because in that moment, Mia knew something important. She was no longer invisible, and this was only the beginning. Mia's fingers danced across the piano keys as if they had a life of their own. The melody she created now was no longer careful or unsure. It rose boldly, like a voice finally freed after years of silence. Every note felt like a confession she had never spoken, and every rise in the music carried the weight of her hidden dreams. The little girl who had walked toward the stage stood still, her eyes filled with wonder. She had never seen someone play with such emotion. Her small hands rested gently on the edge of the piano, almost as if she wanted to feel the music through the wood. Mia looked at her for a moment, and something in her chest softened. The child's innocent face reminded her of herself before life became complicated, before she had to trade her music for survival. But Mia didn't slow down. Instead, her playing grew deeper, stronger, as if the presence of the girl encouraged her to give even more of her soul to the performance. The elite crowd, who usually acted superior, now sat humbly, mesmerized. Their world of wealth and status had no power in this moment. Music did. A woman wearing a sparkling evening gown covered her mouth, trying to hide the tears rolling down her cheeks. A businessman who once yelled at waiters now leaned forward like a student, afraid to miss a single note. Even the rude man who earlier mocked the original pianist looked frozen, unable to explain the tightness he suddenly felt in his throat. Meanwhile, the music producer at the back was no longer sitting. He had stood up slowly, as if the melody itself lifted him. His eyes followed every movement of Mia's hands. He recognized something rare, not just talent, but truth. Many musicians could play fast or perfectly, but few could play with emotion so deep it felt like storytelling without words. He knew instantly that Mia was special. As Mia continued, she felt herself sinking into the music completely. The piano wasn't just an instrument to her. It was a voice she had been forced to silence for years. Now it was shouting, crying, laughing, remembering, all through her fingertips. She felt every beat of her heart echo through the keys. Then she shifted the melody into something unfamiliar even to her. It flowed like water, soft and warm, but held an ache that tightened her chest. She remembered the night she sold her beloved piano to pay for her father's hospital bills. She remembered placing her hand on the piano one last time, whispering goodbye. That alone shaped the next part of her melody, a sound filled with loss, sacrifice, and quiet strength. The crowd felt it too. A heavy stillness washed over the room. People who never thought about the struggles of others suddenly felt them. It was as if Mia's music had reached inside their hearts and pulled out every forgotten pain, every hidden regret. Even the restaurant staff felt it. A young waiter stepped out from behind the counter, his eyes wide with admiration. The head chef removed his hat and wiped the sweat from his forehead, whispering that he had never heard anything like this in his life. The manager watched from the doorway, unsure whether he wanted to cry or cheer. As the melody shifted again, something magical happened. The room didn't feel like a restaurant anymore. It felt like a dream. The lights above shimmered, the shadows danced, and the atmosphere warmed like sunlight breaking through clouds. The music wrapped around everyone like a soft blanket, pulling them closer together, making strangers feel like they shared the same heart for a moment. Then Mia played a note so gentle it almost floated. The little girl beside her gasped and whispered, "It feels like magic." Mia smiled softly without stopping her playing. That single whisper felt like a reward greater than applause. It was the kind of pure reaction she always dreamed her music would inspire. She lifted the melody higher. The crowd leaned in as if drawn by invisible strings. Someone in the back even stood on tiptoe to see better. No one touched their food, no one called for their bill, and no one complained. The restaurant's elite guests, people used to controlling everything, were now controlled by a waitress and her music. As Mia approached the final part of her performance, her hands moved faster, filled with passion she didn't know she still had. She wanted to pour everything into this moment. Everything she lost. Everything she dreamed. Everything she feared. Everything she still hoped for. And the moment her hands struck a deep, powerful chord, the entire room felt it like a heartbeat. People looked at one another in disbelief, because it didn't matter who she was. It didn't matter that she wore an apron. It didn't matter that she served tables. In that moment, Mia was not a waitress. She was a miracle happening right before their eyes. When Mia's hands slowed into a softer melody, the entire restaurant seemed to lean forward, waiting for her next breath, her next note, her next emotion. The crowd had forgotten who they were, forgotten their titles and egos. All they cared about now was the girl at the piano, the girl who had entered their world quietly, and then shattered it with a single performance. A few people whispered to each other, not in mockery but in wonder. Someone said they hadn't heard music like this in years. Another asked if the restaurant had hired her secretly. A man who came every week to show off his wealth now sat humbled, staring at her with an expression that almost looked like respect. But while the crowd tried to uncover the mystery of the girl, the truth began to spread among the staff, slowly, quietly, like a spark moving through dry grass. A busboy whispered to a server beside him that Mia used to study classical piano. A chef added that he once heard her humming complicated melodies during her shift. The manager, who never cared much about her personal life, suddenly remembered the day she asked for fewer night shifts because her father was in the hospital. Now it made sense. The tired eyes, the constant double shifts, the sadness she hid behind a small smile. Mia, who had spent years keeping her dreams buried, had finally revealed a piece of her heart. The applause continued for so long that Mia did not know what to do with her hands. She held them close to her chest as if afraid the moment might disappear if she moved too quickly. Her cheeks turned warm, and her eyes shimmered with tears she tried hard to hold back. She had never received applause like this. Not even in her school competitions. Not even in her childhood recitals. This was different. This felt like 1,000 strangers telling her she mattered. When the noise finally began to settle, the crowd still couldn't take their eyes off her. People leaned forward, waiting to see what she would do next. Even the waiters, who were supposed to continue working, remained frozen in place, unable to return to their duties. It felt like time had paused, holding everyone inside the magic she created. Mia stood up slowly from the bench. Her legs were shaky. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. She glanced at the little girl who had stayed by her side the entire performance. The child smiled proudly, as if she had known all along that Mia was special. Mia reached out and gently touched the girl's hair. It was a small gesture, but the girl's face lit up like she had just been given the greatest gift. Then Mia looked toward the manager. He stood with his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide, and his hands trembling. He didn't know whether to hug her, bow to her, or simply applaud again. For years, he had worked with staff who came and went, but he had never imagined that one of them carried such extraordinary talent. Before he could speak, something unexpected happened. The music producer at the back of the room stepped forward. The crowd noticed him instantly. His presence alone carried weight. People recognized him now. The man who discovered some of the biggest modern musicians. The producer known for finding talent in unlikely places. Whispers spread quickly. Is that really him? What is he doing here? Why is he walking toward the stage? Mia looked confused as he stopped just a few feet from her. She didn't know who he was. She only saw a man with kind but serious eyes studying her as if she were a treasure he had found by accident. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked at the piano, then at her hands, then into her eyes with a mixture of admiration and certainty. Finally, he said softly, but loudly enough for the whole room to hear, "That was not the performance of a waitress. That was the performance of a true artist." The crowd murmured in agreement. Mia felt her breath catch. He stepped closer and continued, "I have heard thousands of musicians in my life. I have traveled the world to find new talent. But tonight, I found something different. I found honesty, pain, hope, fire. I found a voice that needs to be heard." Mia blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. The producer then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. He held it out toward her with both hands, a gesture of respect. "I want to work with you," he said. "I want to help you share your music with the world. If you are willing, your life can change from this very moment." The room gasped. People exchanged excited looks. A few even clapped again out of pure joy. Mia stared at the card. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. She held it delicately, like it was fragile. She had imagined this moment countless times when she was a girl, someone recognizing her talent and offering her a chance. She thought that dream had died long ago, but here it was. Right in front of her. She felt overwhelmed. A mixture of joy and fear twisted in her chest. She looked at the crowd, then at the piano, then at the producer. She thought of her father, lying in bed at home, believing she had given up on her dreams. She thought of all the sacrifices she made, the nights she cried quietly, the mornings she forced herself to keep going. She took a soft breath and whispered, I don't know what to say." The producer smiled warmly. "Say yes when you're ready. The world is waiting for you." The crowd erupted into applause again, louder than before. Mia pressed the card to her heart, feeling its weight. She didn't say yes yet. She didn't say no. She needed time to process the miracle happening in front of her. But she knew one thing for sure. Her life would never be the same again, and neither would the world that had just discovered her. The restaurant slowly returned to life after the applause faded, but nothing truly felt normal. People talked in hushed voices, as if they were afraid a loud sound might break the magic still floating in the air. Some guests approached Mia just to tell her she was amazing. Others asked for her autograph, even though she wasn't famous yet. A few simply stared at her, struggling to understand how someone so quiet, someone they had overlooked all evening, could hold so much power in her hands. Mia stood beside the piano, still clutching the producer's card. Her heart felt too full, as if it might spill over. She had never been given anything this big before. She was used to working hard, earning every small thing with sweat and long hours. But now, a future she thought was dead was suddenly alive again. It scared her as much as it excited her. The producer stayed nearby, watching her with patient eyes. He knew talent when he saw it, but he also knew fear. Many great artists hesitated before accepting their path, and he could see that Mia was carrying years of struggle on her shoulders. He didn't want to rush her. "Take your time," he said gently. "But don't doubt yourself. You belong on a stage larger than this room." Mia nodded slowly, though she was still unsure. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to run toward her dream. But then she remembered her father, his medication, his rent, his care. She couldn't abandon him. She couldn't leave him alone just because she was given a chance at something beautiful. Responsibility tugged at her heart, pulling her backward even as her dream pulled her forward. The little girl who had stood beside her during the performance tugged on her apron softly. When Mia looked down, the child smiled with pure admiration. You made the whole room feel warm, the girl said. You made me feel like I could do anything. Mia kneeled to her level. Do you like music? She asked softly. The girl nodded fiercely. But I'm not good, she whispered. Mia gently touched her cheek. Everyone starts somewhere. Even I did. The little girl hugged her tightly for a second, and Mia felt something inside her heal. That small moment reminded her why she loved music, not for fame or applause, but for connection. Music could touch hearts, change feelings, give courage. It had done that tonight, even to her. Meanwhile, the wealthy guests began offering things: invitations, opportunities, compliments. A woman said she could sponsor Mia's lessons. A man said he could help her find a better piano. Another person offered to cover her shift whenever she needed time off for training. People who ignored her an hour ago now looked at her as if she were priceless. Mia appreciated their kind words, but she wasn't sure what to accept. She didn't want to make promises she couldn't keep. She didn't want to disappoint anyone. She didn't want to disappoint herself. The manager approached her next. His eyes were soft, full of respect she had never seen from him before. Mia, he began quietly, I didn't know. I had no idea you had this talent. She gave him a small smile. I didn't talk about it much. You don't have to take extra shifts anymore, he said. If you need time for music, I'll adjust the schedule. You've earned it. Mia's breath caught. His support meant more than he knew. She nodded gratefully, but when she stepped away from everyone, standing alone for a moment, the weight of everything hit her again. She looked at the business card in her hand, turning it between her fingers. The world wanted her talent. The world believed in her, but what did she believe? A deep fear whispered inside her. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if tonight was just luck? Her hands trembled. Then she remembered the crowd. Standing, she remembered the applause. Roaring, she remembered the little girl's words. You made me feel like I could do anything. Slowly, confidence grew inside her like a small flame. The producer walked toward her again, quieter this time. You don't have to answer tonight, he said. But I want you to know something. Mia looked up. You already changed lives with your music, he said softly. Imagine what you could do if the whole world heard you. Mia stared at him, the flame inside her burning brighter. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't full of fear or sacrifice, a future where her music wasn't just a memory but her purpose. She didn't say yes, she didn't say no, but she finally felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The night ended slowly, but the magic stayed in the air long after the guests began leaving the restaurant. Many stopped one last time to thank Mia or simply look at her with admiration. Some whispered that they would never forget what they witnessed tonight. Others said they felt lucky to have been in the room at that exact moment. The staff quietly cleaned the tables, still speaking about her performance with awe in their voices. But Mia didn't feel like a star. Not yet. She felt like someone standing at the edge of a bridge, afraid to jump, but even more afraid to turn back. The world had handed her a future she never thought she deserved, and now she had to decide whether to accept it. When the restaurant finally emptied, the lights dimmed and the doors closed, she sat again on the piano bench. She placed her hands on the keys, but she didn't play. She just sat there, listening to the silence. Suddenly, the quiet felt as loud as the applause had been. Her thoughts raced from excitement to fear, from dreams to responsibilities. The producer approached quietly and took a seat a few feet away, not wanting to disturb her. He respected artists who needed silence after performing. It was the moment emotions settled, when truths became clear. After a long pause, Mia finally spoke. I want to say yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. He waited, sensing there was more. But, she continued, my father is sick. I work to support him. I can't leave him alone. I can't chase a dream if it hurts him." The producer nodded slowly. "I understand," he said softly. "But following your dream doesn't mean abandoning your father. It means giving him a new reason to smile." Mia looked at him, unsure. "I've seen many artists," he continued. "The ones who succeed, they don't do it alone. They do it with the people they love. If your father could see what you did tonight, he'd tell you to run toward this opportunity." Mia lowered her head. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe her father would say the same thing. As she wiped her face, the restaurant manager joined them. He had been watching from the doorway, unsure whether to interrupt. "Mia," he said gently, "take whatever time you need. You have a job here as long as you want it. But if you choose music, we will be cheering for you." She gave him a grateful smile. Then something unexpected happened. The little girl who had been beside her all night ran back into the restaurant, pulling her mother behind her. The manager looked surprised but allowed it. Knowing the girl meant no harm, the child ran straight to Mia. "I told my mom I want to learn piano," she said proudly. "Because of you." Mia felt her heart soften into something warm and bright. She had inspired someone. She had touched a life. Maybe even more than one. The girl hugged her tightly. "When you play, it feels like the world is good." Mia closed her eyes and held the girl for a moment. It was then she understood something important. Music wasn't just about her dream. It wasn't just about fame or success. It was about sharing something that could heal others. And maybe healing others would help heal her too. She stood up from the piano bench. Her hands stopped shaking. She walked to the producer and handed him the card again, not to return it, but to hold it in both hands with certainty. "I'm ready," she said quietly. "I want to do this. I want to see where music takes me." The producer's face lit up with a smile of someone witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. "Then we start tomorrow," he said warmly. "Your new life begins now." But Mia shook her head gently. "No," she said. "My new life begins tonight." She turned back to the piano, sat down once more, and played a soft, gentle melody. The producer listened. The manager listened. Even the mother and little girl listened. The empty restaurant, still smelling of spices and candles, filled once again with magic. This time, the music wasn't for the elite crowd. It wasn't for applause. It wasn't for discovery. It was for her father. For the little girl. For herself. It was a promise to never bury her gift again. When the final note faded, Mia stood up with confidence she had never felt before. She walked out of the restaurant into the cool night air, feeling lighter than she had in years. The streets were quiet, the sky full of stars, and the future wide open like a door waiting for her to step through. Tomorrow she would face new challenges. Tomorrow she would begin again. Tomorrow she would follow her dream. But tonight she walked home with hope in her heart and music in her soul.